name is Ken Morgan, and I'm the creator of the Morgan Reading Materials. These materials are Orton-Gillingham-based structured literacy programs. The primary difference between these programs and other structured literacy programs is the funny, playful, interactive, and personal reading text. This helps the users of the programs keep students' attention longer, leading to greater reading gains. It also makes reading time more fun for students and for teachers or parents. This video will review the procedures for using these materials. Morgan Dynamic Phonics 1 is for students of elementary and mid-school age. Morgan Dynamic Phonics 2 is designed for high schoolers and adults. The Dynamic Roots program teaches higher level reading and vocabulary skills through the study of roots, prefixes, suffixes, and word origins. Note: even though the word phonics is in our name and in the name of our programs, these programs teach much more than simple phonics. From pre-reading activities like phonemic awareness to using powerful phonemic awareness activities to enhance phonics instruction, to syllable division and syllable identification, to morphemes and morphological awareness. These materials are based on scientific research in the field of reading instruction. You can find an extensive reference list on our website. Structured literacy in Orton-Gillingham are designed to teach the structure of the English language, the structure of words in the language. Because we have ignored the structure of English in our reading instruction, reading scores in the United States have been flat for decades. Students who don't understand the structure cannot decode unfamiliar words in the English language. This is a quote from Louisa Moats, researcher and author. Given the consistent evidence from at least 4 decades of research, the public should expect that educators would have studied and implemented the findings. Not so. The gap between science-based ideas and practices and those most often used in our classrooms remains very wide and persistent. In my 25 years of using these programs in my elementary school special ed classes, I noticed that over 95% of my students struggled with decoding and needed to be taught in this manner. Now, back at the beginning of the 21st century, with the No Child Left Behind Act, the Texas Reading Initiative, and the California Reading Initiative, we thought that the science of reading instruction would influence how reading was taught in the schools. Unfortunately, this did not happen, and our kids did not get the instruction they needed. This is mostly because professors of education refuse to teach the science of reading instruction and still do so to this day in many colleges. Many of us have been advocating for change for decades with little success. There have been some recent successes. Mississippi began teaching teachers and professors how to do this kind of instruction in 2013 and has recently shown greater gains in reading scores than any other state. There have also been some improvements in teacher certification tests in states like New Mexico and California. Until we start teaching our beginning and our struggling students according to scientific research, we will continue to fail a large portion of our students. There are 5 skills needed to be a good reader in the English language according to research in the No Child Left Behind Act. They are phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Each one of these is a major building block for successful reading. All of them are necessary, but none of them is sufficient in and of themselves. Phonemic awareness is the understanding that words contain specific sounds called phonemes and the ability to blend, segment, and manipulate those phonemes. So it's the understanding that you can take the sounds k, a, t, and squish them together and get the word cat. It's the understanding that the word man has 3 sounds in it, a, n. Phonemic awareness helps students learn to read and spell. It is the necessary underpinning upon which reading is built in a phonetic language such as English. Without phonemic awareness, you cannot learn to be a good reader in the English language. And this is something that we have really discovered in the last 10 or 15 years of research. And this is a really important finding. This allows us to realize that we can teach almost anybody how to be a good reader. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about as we go along here. Phonemic awareness has been called the greatest breakthrough in universal literacy since the invention of the printing press. And if you want to find out more about phonemic awareness, there are a lot of studies referred to on the website under scientific underpinnings and also in the teacher's manual. We will be reviewing 3 phonemic awareness training techniques in this film: the finger tapping method, the block spelling method, and the sound spelling method. So the next piece is phonics, which is sound symbol correspondence. Research shows that systematic and explicit phonics instruction significantly improves word reading, spelling, and reading comprehension, and is particularly beneficial for students having difficulty learning to read. And the next piece is vocabulary, which we teach through the reading and understanding of the words in the reading text, through various strategies for vocabulary expansion, such as listening comprehension, and also direct explicit instruction in new vocabulary. Also, we have the Dynamic Roots program, which is a higher level reading and vocabulary program, which we will look at a little bit later in this tape. Fluency is the next piece. We teach fluency through teaching automatic word recognition, through doing sentence repetition, and doing fluency drills. And they're scattered throughout the text, different kind of fluency drills, and I'm going to show you a little bit later one of the easy fluency drills that you can do. And also we do this by getting that automaticity between the sound symbol correspondence in phonics. Comprehension we work within this program through the interactive, meaningful text, and through the meaning of the words and sentences in the text that they're reading in the program, and also through direct instruction of different comprehension strategies. And you can find a lot of that also in the teacher's manual. So comprehension, fluency, and vocabulary, you can find a lot of information about those and strategies that we use both on the website under comprehension and fluency and in your teacher's manual under comprehension and fluency. So all of these aspects are built into the Morgan Dynamic Phonics program. The Morgan Dynamic Phonics programs are adaptations of the Orton-Gillingham instructional method, which has been used successfully to teach dyslexic children how to read for over 50 years, mostly in private schools. What scientific research has shown us in the last 10-15 years is the same methods that we use to teach these very disabled readers how to read are the same methods that we need to use to teach almost any student struggling to learn to read or adult who has not been able to learn to read. And again, you can look at the research and read that for yourself. If you're trained in Orton-Gillingham methods, you'll be able to pick up and use this material fairly quickly, because a lot of the Orton-Gillingham methodology is incorporated into this program. But there are also some other things that you will find through reading this which do not come from Orton-Gillingham, things that I picked up through working in the classroom, picked up from different teachers. So it is still important that you read through those directions. Matter of fact, many Orton-Gillingham people buy my program because it's so easy to use and so much fun. If you haven't been trained in Orton-Gillingham, you will have to read these instructions more carefully and more times than once. What I suggest is, after you see this tape, read through the directions up to lesson 1, and then start teaching. Another couple weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later, read through those directions again. Another couple months later, read through those directions again. And the reason is because if you see that Orton-Gillingham training takes from 6 weeks to 2 years, and I've had the intensive training and a bunch of smaller trainings, and then I've been working out with this program for 10 years, adding new techniques which I find from research, which I find from other programs, there's a lot of information in here. A lot of information. So it's a lot to digest, and you're not going to get it in the first reading. I do have one caveat here, though, for if you haven't been trained in Orton-Gillingham. If you had trouble learning to read as a child yourself, or if you perhaps English is your second language, or if when we go through the sounds at the end of this tape you have any doubt at all about being able to say those sounds correctly, you need to sit down with somebody else who didn't have trouble learning to read, or English is not a second language, and make sure that you can say those sounds correctly. It is crucial to say those sounds correctly and to teach your students how to say those sounds correctly so they can blend them together in words and segment them apart for spelling. I have a first grader this year who, for the first couple weeks in my class, she kind of refused to say the sounds correctly. So she was going b, k, d, f, and you know, it was really hindering her progress. But one day, for some reason, she decided, okay, well, I'm going to say the words, I'm going to say the sounds the way Mr. Morgan does. And suddenly she started saying the sounds correctly. It was 5 times easier for her to sound out new words using the right sounds for the different letters. Near the end of this tape, I'm going to go through all the sounds one by one so that you can refer back to that part of the tape to get those sounds. Orton-Gillingham training can be very useful, and if you have a chance for Orton-Gillingham training, go ahead and do it. A lot of people will use my program for a while and they see really good success, and then they go do Orton-Gillingham training with somebody and become even better teachers. I don't do Orton-Gillingham training because I'm a full-time teacher and I'd much rather be in the classroom, so I'm out there in the trenches. I do get calls from teachers and administrators that tell me that my program has worked very well for students for which nothing else had worked, and that the teachers using the program had not been trained in Orton-Gillingham, which meant that they had really read those instructions and really studied it and trained themselves. So this video is going to be an overview of the program. I'm going to touch on most of the pieces of the program, but there's a lot more in the teacher's manual than I can say here. So please do not watch this video and then start teaching. You need to read the instructions and then start your teaching. Our programs are very well made, easy to understand, and extremely inexpensive compared to other Orton-Gillingham programs and compared to other reading programs. For the reading books, we have very thick laminated covers. We have very sturdy paper and a sturdy binding. These books can last you 10 or 15 years if you treat them well. We also have, instead of having workbooks that you have to buy every year, we have this set of reproducibles. So all of your homework and your worksheets are in here, and you just run them off so you don't have to buy workbooks. Also, since these materials go from beginning reading up to 5th grade level, you can work with a lot of different levels with these same materials. So after you have a basic understanding of how the programs work, and we talked about reading those instructions and carefully learning the different methodologies in these programs, after you understand that, you'll have very little preparation to do before each lesson. Mainly, you'll just have to make sure that you have your reproducible sheets, the homework and the worksheets and the independent sheets, run off, and so it'll be very easy for you to use the programs at that point because you have so little preparation to do. Also, I am the resource person for these materials, so if you have my materials and you have questions or problems, you can call me or you can email me through the website. The Morgan Dynamic Phonics materials combine Orton-Gillingham methodology with powerful phonemic awareness training techniques with phonetically controlled text that is meaningful, interactive, and humorous. Morgan Dynamic Phonics is the only Orton-Gillingham program that uses humor as a major teaching tool. It's probably the only reading program too, I'm not sure. There's a lot of text which is personally meaningful for students. Text that gives them a chance to talk about personal experiences and likes or dislikes, and some of it's just plain funny, which makes the whole reading process more fun for everybody. Now, I personally wrote this text for my students. I never planned to sell this when I first wrote it, but I wrote it for my students. And I'm kind of a goofy teacher, and I love to joke around with my kids, so the stuff that I wrote for them was engaging and funny and meaningful. But there is reasons from research why we would have a certain text like this. And that is that research shows us that non-disabled readers can read a word 5 or 6 times and they know it to automaticity. Some of our students that are having trouble need to read a word 50, 100 to 200 times in order to get that word to the same level of automaticity to become fluent readers. So what that means is we need lots and lots and lots of repetition, which is what we have in this program. But if you can't make that reading text with all that repetition funny and interesting and engaging for your students, you're going to drive them crazy and bore them to death with all that repetition. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell you about some of the sentences in this program. I'm going to show you kind of how they work and how they engage students. So as I'm going through this, think about your student or students that you're working with and what kind of sentences they might respond to or relate to even in whatever way. Here are some of these first sentences are more for the elementary, mid-school, and some of them are in both, and then later on I'll tell you some sentences that are more for high school and adult. These first ones are kind of silly. I'm as strong as King Kong. I want to be a bride. Now, can you see a 4th grade boy saying that? I lost my brain in class. I'm a cool dude. I like to dress like a lady. Can you see a 7th grade boy reading that? My brain is huge. I want to fall in love. Don't torture me by making me read anymore.
Do you have their
No.
Ed 3
Yep.
heads? No.
You don't?
I do.
Got a couple more back there somewhere? Number 14.
Smell my breath.
No, thank you. Thank you. 24. 24.
You are quick.
No.
You are in quicksand.
No, that's magic E word.
You are in quite strangle.
Well, close, but that's a soft G because it is.
You are quite strange.
I know, not. Who said that? 25.
Clap twice.
Now, at the end of each lesson, we have yes/no questions. So I'm going to give you some of these questions as we go through and I show you some more of this text. Do pills have legs? Will you stink if you spank a skunk? Is your brain made of glue? Are you married? Now, here are some gross sentences from the not-so-gross version. In the elementary mid-school, we have a gross version and a not-so-gross version. This is the not-so-gross. I can lick a big bug. I can eat a big fat rat. I like to eat a bug for my snack. A lot of kids think that's funny, especially in elementary school, mid-school. I have a rose in my nose. Pick my nose. I love to fry flies to eat for dinner. I like to kiss worms. This is an important question,
number 11. Can you pick your nose with your... Does the E say its name?
No, because it divides between the L and the B.
What's this?
They're giving you hints, Greg.
What's elbow? This? No. I can't. Wait.
Go ahead.
There goes his
Next one, number 12. Homework questions. Do your feet smell bad? Do you like to eat snakes? Now, if my students are filling out their homework or independent work, when they get to the sentence that says, do you like to eat snakes, they don't want to mark yes, because they know if they do, I'm going to tease them a little bit. So they've got to kind of pay attention to those sentences. Did you kiss a fish? Are your socks very smelly? Can a toilet stink? Do you like to eat fried worms? Now, a lot of the sentences in here are interactive, which means that when a student reads a sentence with the word you in it, you assume they're talking to you, and you respond to them as if they're talking to you. Now, here's a nice sentence. I'm glad you are my teacher. Isn't that nice? Now, how about this one? You're a terrible teacher. At this point, I go to the office. And they laugh, and they go to the door, and they come back. And with older students, I might go, you know, you're getting yourself in trouble here. Be careful. And I got a call from an administrator the other day, and she said, you know, I have some new teachers that are they're first-year teachers, and I'm a little worried about the sentences where they, you know, where the students call the teacher a bad teacher. And what I said to the administrator was, you know something, by the time you get to that part in the program, those kids will be having so much success, and those teachers will be feeling so successful that it's not going to be an issue, it'll be a joke. And that is actually the case, because by the time you get there, your kids are going to be reading pretty well. I like all of my teachers except you. This class gives me a pain in the brain. You are not fair. You are a real grouch today. Now I might say, I'm okay today, but Monday I was a little grouchy. You make it real, right? You need to just relax and chill. I enjoy this class. This class is wrecking my mind. You are a fantastic teacher. 18.
This class is dreadful.
What? Go to the office. Homework questions. Can your teacher annoy you? Can your teacher be grumpy? Are you an awesome student? Can't you see how awesome your teacher is? Do you think reading is important? Now there are some sentences in which students will ask for things, and it's best to give them those things because it's more fun. Okay? And there's a list in your teacher's manual of all the sentences where the students ask for things. So if a student says, I wish for cash, if it's an elementary student, I'm probably going to give them a penny. If it's a mid-school, maybe I'll give them a nickel. If it's high school, maybe I'll give them a dime. Okay? And then you have other sentences like, please give me a dime, pay me, please give me a marble, I want some popcorn, please give me a donut, please give me a nickel, please give me $1 for reading this, please give me $1 million. You don't have to do the last one if you don't want. But on the days when the kid reads, when one of the students reads, I want some popcorn, that's when I bring in popcorn. On the day when a student reads, please give me a donut, that's when I bring in donuts. Number 1.
Sway for me.
Number 2.
May I help you?
Probably, I don't know. Number 3.
Stay here.
Okay. Number 4.
What day is it?
It's Thursday.
May I jump?
Sure. Number 6.
I like to play with clay.
Okay. 7.
May I sleep?
Okay. Number 8.
Pay me.
Okay, here you go.
Say my name.
Nicole.
Stay in your chair.
Okay. 11.
I rode on the subway.
Number 12.
I cannot stay.
You have to leave?
Yep.
Number 13.
Please laugh at me.
Number 14.
What do you say?
I don't know, what do you say? Number 15.
May I sing for you?
Sure, go ahead.
La 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 la.
Okay, feelings. Student reads, I am very upset with you. I might go, why? What did I do? Okay? Makes it meaningful. Student reads, I am very, very sad. I might go, is that true? Student might go, yeah, you know, my dog died. Gee, I'm sorry to hear that. And then you go on with the lesson, but you made written language come alive in that moment. This is not a good day for me. I am very grumpy today. I might say, yeah, you are a little grumpy. What's up with that? I feel fantastic. I feel wonderful. Did you notice how happy I am? Questions. Is it fun to win? Do you like yourself? Were you a grouch today? Did you have a fantastic day? Do you worry a lot? Do you feel terrible today? Experience type of sentences. I have a good brain. My teacher says that I'm smart. I am good at sports. Now that's probably the one you want to give to your student who's doing sports if you're working in a group. Life is magic. I have a lot of artistic ability. You know, a lot of students who have trouble learning to read do have good artistic ability. My brain is very valuable. Life is not fair sometimes. I hit a home run in a baseball game.
Did you smash a window with a rake?
No, not a rake. What's that word? No.
Rock. Oh, yeah.
You smashed a window with a rock? Uh-oh, I'm telling your mom.
I threw a rock into the tree, and then I had to pay for the window.
Questions. Can you rap? Have you been on a date? Do you like your life? Does life seem fair to you? Do you like to be on stage? Do you live on the third planet from the sun? Are you very important? Do you feel happy today? So all of these sentences kind of lend themselves to little discussions and kind of lend themselves to them talking a little bit about themselves, for you learning more about them and them learning about you, and it's through written language, which is what you're trying to teach them. Interactive sentences, which again are for fun. I will clap when you rap. So, you know, make up a little rap of some sort and say it, and then they can clap for you. You can bring that in that day. Can you do a trick for us? That's the day you bring in a magic trick to do for your students. Scratch your hand. Now here's a student that's trying to sound out, scratch your hand, and you go like this. And they go, oh, scratch your hand, that's what it means. Right? So you're using this interactive stuff as a way to teach comprehension. The student reads, shake my hand. Boom, like that. If he doesn't understand the sentence, he understands it now. Shake my hand. Wave to me. I dare you to cry. Tell us a good joke. That's the day you bring in a good joke to tell. I've been working on the railroad. You can sing that one. Laugh at us. Smell my feet.
My face fell off and my head.
It did? Ooh.
Doesn't make no sense. My head. Face. Oh, my head. Not me.
Face fell off your head, okay. And here's some other sentences that lend themselves to play acting. I can hop and hop. I can rap for my class. May I sing for you? May I dance for you?
Let me dance.
Yeah.
Dance for you.
Okay, go ahead. Dance for me.
La 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 la. No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, that depends on your style as a teacher, how much you're going to let your kids move around. Now,
It also depends on where you're teaching. If you're at the back of a regular classroom and there's another class on the other side of the room, you probably are not going to be able to have your kids do a lot of singing and dancing. But if you have your own room and that's your style and you want to let that happen, it's fun. And not all kids are going to want to dance, not all kids are going to want to sing, but the ones that do kind of make that activity fun. I can act like a chimp. In my class, we're all jumping around like monkeys for a few minutes, and believe it or not, they pay better attention when they come back. And that's kind of the theory of this. I can act like you. Last year I worked with high school students. They did great imitations of me. They were hysterical. May we act silly now? May I act like a little baby? Take off your head. Oh, I can't quite get it off. I am generous. Who wants some money? I do. So you interact with them around the sentences. Do you like to act silly? Can you act like a robot? Are you really Superman? Are you an alien from another planet? So I find that especially with younger students, allowing them to move around and act a little silly, and even with older students, helps keep their attention. And it also makes written language come alive for them. It makes it meaningful for them. I had one second grader who turned to the second grader next to her and said, "The page watches you and makes up sentences about you." And there are other students that imply little things that the teacher should do. For instance, student reads, "Be a cat." Meow. Student reads, "Nap for me." Student reads, "Pick up the pen." Student reads, "Swim for me." Act glad, act mad, stretch for me. I had a new second grader in my class last week, and the first day she was in my class, she read the sentence, "Hop for me." And I started hopping around the room. That was one of the funniest things she'd ever seen.
Clap for me. Thank you. Flex for me. Sob for me. Bat for me. I sat on a rat.
Yeah.
Fish for me. I can bug you.
You could.
Yeah, I can. I bug Wade all the time. I can kiss a wet pig.
Yuck.
Toss me cash. Thank you.
Rhyming and alliteration. Dot got the hot pot on the cot. A cub can rub and scrub the tub at the club. I can sing a long, strong song and hit a gong as I play ping pong. A snake can bake a fake cake and make a shake at the lake. The cool fool can drool in the pool at school. Silly Billy and Silly Willy got chilly. My face can race in outer space. And here are some sentences from the Morgan Dynamic Phonics 2 program for high schoolers and adults. Some of them are also in the other program, but some of them are only in the adult high school program. You bug me. I like to hang with my friends. I can be a cut-up. I can rap for my class. Kiss my pizza. I stink when I run fast. Do not do the crime if you cannot do the time. I have to strain my brain in this class. I can dig it, man. You need to just relax and chill. My brain is backwards today. I have a lot of intelligence. Okay, number 13.
Who am I?
You're Robert. Number 14.
Who are you?
I'm Ken. 15.
Stomp your feet.
16.
Make a speech.
Ladies and gentlemen. Number, this one here.
Freeze for me.
Next one, 20.
I fell in the creek.
21.
Give a cheer.
Yay! 22.
I feel fine.
Good. 23.
I ate a bee.
Ooh. 25.
The leech was on me.
Really? Next one, 25.
Let me see your teeth.
Number 26.
I like to sleep in class.
You do.
Okay, yeah, that's fun.
27.
Feed me.
There you go.
Oh, good. Keep them coming.
28.
Please do not weep.
Okay, I won't. Number 29.
I can make a speech.
Okay.
20 years ago.
Very good. Number 30.
I need to brush my teeth.
You do.
Yeah, actually I do.
Last one.
Where are your feet?
Here they are. questions. It is a crime to drink and drive. Questions. Do you torment your teacher? Is reading like torture? Do your pants sag? Do you like yourself? Do you shave? Did you give your date a rose? Does life seem fair to you? Do you have a pimple? Do you think this class is stupid? Have you been dumped? Are you romantic? Are you thankful to be alive? Now here's a few sentences from the Dynamic Roots program, which is the higher level vocabulary reading program, which we'll look at a little bit later. But let me give you a few sentences and questions also from that program. I felt dejected after being rejected. I cannot find my pulse. Am I alive? I can't get no satisfaction. Of course, you can sing that one. My olfactory nerves allow me to smell you. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. My brain is not removable. This class is insufferable. My brain is inaccessible today. Enough of this nonsense. I have an allergic reaction to reading. I want to request a new teacher. Obstinance can be an obstacle to success. Dyslexic people have a hard time learning to read and spell. Homework questions. Have you been ejected from school? Have you been indicted for a crime? Can a bathroom be odoriferous? Do you like to provoke others? Did you make an interception in a football game? Do you like to talk nonsense? Can you be obstinate at times? Are you deceased? Do you have any progeny? Are you hyperactive? Are you ambivalent about your future? And are you content with your life? You'll find a lot more examples of these sentences on my website under Humorous and Interactive Sentences, and you can take a look at that. Now, we've talked about the not-so-gross version, and I want to show you the extra words that are in the gross version or the original version. And so these words are in the elementary and mid-school gross version, and it's strictly a matter of teacher choice whether you want your students to be saying these words or not. There's about 70, 75, 80 sentences with these words in them, and they are pretty gross and pretty funny for students, but it is really a matter of teacher choice whether or not you want to buy this version or the other version. I will tell you that most of my mid-school teachers buy this version, because by the time you have students who have failed for 6 or 7 years at reading, you need to engage them any way you can, and these sentences with these words are pretty engaging for students. So this triangle represents the structure of the English language, how oral language maps to print. And we have a phonetic language, but it's not completely phonetic, so we have different layers of the structure of the English language, or the structure of words in the English language. Research shows us that about 1/3 of all students can easily intuit the internal structure of the language. Those are the students that will learn to read regardless of what teaching method you give them. Those are the students who you can give some good books to, send them off to a corner, and they'll learn to read by themselves. They don't need you. But there's another 2/3 of students that need some skills training. Now, some of them only need a little bit. 6 months of phonics and phonemic awareness in first grade for a lot of kids, or in kindergarten, will do it. They don't need to be taught anymore. They're off and running. Okay? Whereas other students will need to go through all these steps, may need more intense instruction, may need small group instruction, and through the different layers of the structure of the language. So phonemic awareness we have here on the bottom, and that, of course, we've talked about, indispensable. If you don't have this, the whole pyramid collapses. Phonics, sound symbol correspondence, syllable division, syllable typing, which is an ingenious method that the Orton-Gillingham people discovered, how to divide words into syllables and label those syllables to make them a lot more decodable, a lot easier to sound out. And then we have morphology, which is the study of root words and prefixes and suffixes and word origins, which we will look at a little bit when we look at the Dynamic Roots program. And then up here we have the question mark, and what this stands for is that if you teach all this and your student or students don't read, this is all going to disappear. So somehow they have to become excited about reading and start reading, so that these layers and skills are reinforced, and their reading becomes more fluent and easier for them. And it doesn't matter if they're reading car magazines or sports page or whatever, they just have to read and read. Now, there's one other way I recently found out that you can do this, and that is that I worked with my stepdaughter for 2.5 years at home, teaching her how to read after the school day, because the school wasn't getting the job done. And she learned a lot. She learned a lot of these skills. We went through all this, and she became a much better reader. She is now a freshman in high school, and reading is pretty good, but it's not great for her. She still struggles with it a little bit, and she doesn't love to read, but she wants to get good grades. So what's happening, because she wants good grades, is she's reading stuff carefully. She's spending more time reading, and her reading is improving, and so reading is becoming a little bit easier for her, so she's starting to like to read a little bit more. Good reading instruction for struggling readers needs to be direct, explicit, systematic, sequential, structured, repetitive, intensive, multisensory, cumulative, and thorough or mastery-oriented. What direct instruction means is it needs to be out loud, and the student or students needs to be close to you, because you are training them to think linguistically, which they don't do. You are training their ears. You are training them on how to say the sounds, on how to blend the sounds together, and how to take the sounds apart. So that's why you work with your student or students close to you, and you are working out loud, direct instruction. Explicit means that we teach skills explicitly. Systematic means it's done step by step, and sequential means it's done in a certain sequence. And then our next piece is structured, which means phonetically controlled text. Okay? With my program, printed word starts to make sense to the student from the very beginning. In lesson 1, we teach 9 letters and 9 sounds. From those 9 letters, the kids can read 26 words. With those 26 words and 3 easy sight words, they read 38 sentences in class, and they have 17 sentences, yes and no sentences, for homework or for independent work. Now, most students, when they come to my class, they've never read a whole page that they could read by themselves. So this is thrilling for them. It gives them a sense of accomplishment and also motivates their effort. So they have success from the very beginning, and they keep having success partially because we keep teaching to mastery at each level. Repetitive, and we've talked about repetitive having to do with the interesting and humorous text. Now I'll say one thing. If reading is hard for you, it's going to take a lot of energy to learn how to read. Anything you do that's new or anything that you do that's difficult for you, your brain uses up a lot of glucose. It takes a lot of energy to do it. So at some point, for almost any student or students that you work with, you're going to have to give the little speech about, this takes effort and we know this is hard. But no matter how much fun you're having and how many funny sentences there are, there's still going to be at some point a period where you're going to have to give the little good effort speech. I have a 3rd grade class this year, and they're a real goofy class, and we have a lot of fun. But it was 2.5 months into the school year before I had to mention effort and hard work, because they'd been having such a blast for 2.5 months, they didn't even know how hard they were working. And here's another example. A couple of years ago, I had a group of 1st graders who I worked with for almost 2 hours straight, 4 days a week. And the only reason I was able to work for that length of time with those students, and by the way, they didn't get really grumpy very often, but the reason I was able to do that is because I really worked with the text. So Johnny reads I can be a snake, so he's crawling around like a snake over here while I'm helping the next student sound out the next sentence. And then when we get to I can act like a chimp, we're all jumping around like monkeys. So we really use that material to allow the kids to be goofy and have fun, and at the same time they were really working very, very hard, and that group made tremendous progress in reading that year. And the next thing we're going to talk about is intensive instruction. Now if you have anything more than just mild reading problems with a student or students that you're working with, you need 5 hours of instruction a week. If you can get 6, great. If you can get 7, great. If you can get 8, wonderful. If you're a parent, you might be able to get away with a little less than that. But you want to teach your students to read as quickly as possible and get them on grade level or up to a good reading level as fast as possible. I tell the parents of the students that I work with that if I could teach them reading and spelling for 3 hours a day, I would do that. And to tell you the truth, I could get them back on grade level 2 or 3 times faster if I had that kind of time structure. Next piece of this is multisensory. Now, Samuel Orton was the guy who invented multisensory instruction, and it's really cool and it works really well. What happens is you take the strong sensory modalities and you link them up with the weaker sensory modalities, and the stronger sensory modalities strengthen the weaker sensory modalities and improve memory needed for efficient reading. And I'm going to show you some of those multisensory techniques as we go. Cumulative means that the program builds on itself. So if you're in lesson 20, they're going to be reading words from lesson 18, lesson 15, lesson 10. And the last one is thorough instruction or mastery-oriented instruction. So what you do is, as you introduce new material, you continually review the material that you've already gone over, and you try to teach each lesson to mastery. And we'll talk a little bit about mastery a little bit later in this tape and what that means. If your students have not learned a certain set of words, it only means that you haven't gone over those words enough, that you need to stay on that lesson for a little while longer. In some of the schools, I think, where programs like this work the best is, say, I have some mid-schoolers where all the special ed teachers are using my programs, and they all have first and second period for reading, and they level the students by reading level, but then they can move students around. So say Timmy misses 3 weeks of school, you move him down to a lower group because he's missed too much. Or Susie looks bored in this group, you can move her up a little bit because even though she'll miss some lessons, you're continually reviewing those pieces that you've taught beforehand. Also remember that the speed with which a person learns to read may have little to do with overall intelligence or future reading competence. Okay, so now we're going to look at the basic lesson plan. I'm going to show you all the different parts of a lesson. So if you look at this page, if you have your teacher's manual, it's bottom page maybe 24, 25, and these have all the different pieces of a lesson. Now you may not get through a whole lesson in a day, you may get stopped down here and then pick up from where you left the day before and the next day, or you may do 2 lessons in a day depending on your group or your student that you're working with. But we're going to go through each of these pieces. I'm going to give you an introduction to each one of them. Now for most students, this basic lesson plan will guide you in your daily work. For students who are having trouble with for the first lesson, the first couple lessons, there is a procedure called the modified lesson plan in your instructions to use for those students. If your students are really not getting it at all, you look for the section on pre-reading activities, which is also labeled phonemic awareness activities on the website, and you put the books away and you go do phonemic awareness activities orally, so they're learning how to blend and segment those phonemes. And then when they can do that, then you go back to the written words and to the books. With that first grade class, I did that for about 3 weeks. We just did oral phonemic awareness, and they could blend and segment 3 and 4 phoneme words, and when we went back to the book, they just took off like crazy because that's what they needed. And on the other hand, if you have students that are reading at a high first grade level or higher than that, you go to the section on abbreviated lesson plans so you can go quickly through those first lessons that they may not need a lot of. Okay, so the first thing on there is the review of the previous day's homework. So if you as a classroom teacher send homework home, and it's mainly the yes and no questions, which I'm going to show you a little bit later, or if you as a tutor leave work to be done at home, then you need to instruct parents, do not help your child with this work, because you want them to do those yes-no questions by themselves so you can tell whether or not you have mastery in that lesson. This is one of the things that's going to tell you that. So if you do send home homework or leave homework, then probably that's going to be the first thing you do when you come in for the next days of instruction. If they get more than 1 or 2 wrong on these sheets, it may mean that you need to stay with that lesson longer. The next part is review of previous lessons. This is a completely natural part of the system. If you're on lesson 20 and you notice that your students are having trouble with words you taught in lesson 13, you just go back and do some review. It's perfectly okay to do that. These are the red words, and these are mostly non-phonetic words, which are the old Anglo-Saxon words which we use in every sentence that we speak practically. The and does and put and from and of, those very common words that you can't sound out. So we learn these by sight, and we introduce 1 or 2 of these usually in each lesson, and then we go over them again and again. But the way that we teach this is we use the multisensory method called skywriting or table writing. So what I'll do is I'll go T-H-E spells the, and the students will do that with me. T-H-E spells the. For older students, you can have them do that on the table. T-H-E spells the, T-H-E spells the. So we want our students to learn these to 100% mastery, to complete automaticity. So we teach them, with the skywriting or the table writing, but you go over them enough times so that they have them down perfect, because you don't want them missing these small words when they're reading sentences. These are important and they are difficult to sound out, so we learn them by sight.
L-I-K-E spells like. L-I-K-E spells like.
Now we're going to look at the phoneme letter cards, and phonemes are the sounds that letters spell. And we teach these with that same multisensory skywriting or table writing that we use for red words. And one reason we do that is because if you teach in a multisensory fashion, then you don't have to worry if this kid is weak visually or weak auditory or weak kinesthetically, because you're using all the senses. So what we do to teach these is we will go C, cat, k, C, cat, k, C, cat, k. And with your older students, you can do that on the table. C, cat, k, C, cat, k. Okay, and then we have a vowel here. This is A, and for this we do A, apple, A. A, apple, A. And you can also do that on the table, of course, A, apple, A. But you can also stretch out that sound, so you can go A, apple, A, to kind of emphasize that and help them get that sound. Now, the short E is one that some students have trouble with. So we're doing E, Eddie, E. And this boy's name is Eddie. E, Eddie, E. And again, we can stretch that out. E, Eddie, E. Now, first we're doing the whole thing. We're doing E, Eddie, E. And then they're just saying E, Eddie, E as they become more and more automatic. Then they're just saying E, E. And then after a while, you're going for automaticity, so you just want them to say E. You want them to have these sounds down automatically. So then when they look at a word and they're trying to sound out a word, they don't have to try and remember what the sounds are. They have the sounds right there in their head. And the work can be putting those sounds together, because if they have to try to remember and blend them together, that's an impossible situation. So we teach these to automaticity. And of course, it's important that you say these sounds correctly and that you teach these sounds correctly to your students. Say it with me. A, Y, play, A. A, Y, play, A. E, E, feed, E. E, E, feed, E. Now you have these on cards, and you also have them on your posters, which are either up on your wall if you're in a classroom teacher, or there are smaller versions that you can put on your desk if you're a tutor. So what you're going to do is you're going to uncover these as you cover these lessons. For each lesson, you're going to uncover the letters on these sheets. And the second one is most of the blends, beginning and ending blends, and again you're going to uncover those as you go. So your students can look up on the wall or on the table, look at the table, and remember exactly what you've taught before that. Then we have some vowel spellings. We have our magic E's here, I, G, H, Y, and some different spellings here on this sheet, which again you're going to uncover as you go. Then we have two vowel team charts. This is the first one. Vowel teams are two vowels in a row that make a certain sound. And here is the second sheet here. And now, if you have students who understand percentages, probably third grade and up, we have another copy of those three sheets which have percentages on them. And what this means is O consonant E spells O 81% of the time. Okay, now that's useful information. IGH spells I almost all the time. So these percentages can help them make better guesses for letters and their sounds. And here is the first vowel team page. Now we see here EE spells E 99% of the time. Now the one exception is the word bin, B-E-E-N. But remember those kids I talked about who intuit the internal structure of the language? Those kids, by their reading, figure this out. They know when they see a word and it has EE in it and it's not bin, that's going to say E. They know that, but we teach it to our students. EA spells E 63% of the time. Now a little bit later in the program, EA spells E 26% of the time. So E is your first guess, E is your second guess. Then we have three sight words, break, stake, and great. And those are the three that sound like A, and we teach those as sight words. But you see how this makes students be able to make better guesses when they see vowels and vowel combinations. And at the end of this tape, we will go through all those sounds so that you can carefully listen to those sounds and say them correctly. Now the next things are the spell it cards. So in Orton-Gillingham, we always go both ways, from reading to spelling to spelling to reading. So we've just taught A, apple, a. I turn to a student and I go, say a, and then I say, spell a. And the student goes, A spells a. I'll turn to a student and I'll say t. Spell t. Answer is T spells t. Now after lesson 11, if I say to a student, I want you to tell me 3 ways to spell k, because we've learned 3 ways, the student will say C, K, and CK, because we've learned 3 things that spell k at that point. After lesson, and the long vowels too, they build up. So after lesson 55, I'll ask a student, give me 5 ways to spell O. O consonant E, OA, OE, O at the end of our open syllable, and OW. So there's 5 major ways to spell O. But he doesn't have to remember all those in his head because they're up there on the wall, on the posters. They've been uncovered so he can refer up there to them. And this is a very important piece of the program, and also this is another time when it's very important to say those sounds correctly, because you're asking them to identify the letters that spell those sounds. Say a.
A.
Spell a.
A spells a.
Say sh.
Sh.
Spell sh.
SH spells sh.
Say ch.
Ch.
Spell ch.
CH spells ch.
The next thing is the phonics ball game, and I use this a lot with any age student for at least the first 10 lessons, sometimes the first 20 lessons. And what we're doing is we're trying to build automaticity with those letters and sounds. So I will throw the ball to a student and I'll say M. The student will throw the ball back and say M. I'll throw it to a student, I'll say L, they'll throw it back and say O. I'll throw it, I'll say A, they'll throw it back and say A. Then I'll go the opposite way. I'll throw the ball and I'll say T. They'll throw it back and say T. I'll throw the ball and say A. They'll throw it back and say O. So this is a really fun procedure. These foam balls are nice because they can't knock anything over, and if you can get the bigger ones, they're even better, because little children can handle them very easily. So the next part is the introduction of new material. Now when you get to a new lesson, realize everything here is numbered. There's lesson numbers on the red cards, on the spell it cards, on the phoneme cards, on the posters. Everything you could pull together for a new lesson, you will be able to tell from all the different numbers on the cards. And now I want to talk about syllable division and syllable typing. And this is real important because it really helps students learn to read bigger words. Now what we have here is we have 6 syllable division rules, and we have the numbers where we introduce them, and I'll show you how we do that. So we're dividing words by specific kind of rules, and then we are labeling the syllables in specific ways, so we know what kind of syllable each is when we divide a word up into 2 syllables. So the reason we do this is because in English, vowels are a real problem. Consonants are pretty well behaved, but vowels do all kinds of weird things. But if you can take a word and divide it into syllables, and you can label that syllable as being a certain type of syllable, like an R-controlled or open or closed syllable, you have a much better chance of figuring out what that vowel spells and a much better chance of reading that word. So that's why we do syllable division. And if you haven't done this before, it's not going to be hard for you. There's about 30 worksheets, 35 worksheets, and you will learn it right along with your students. So here again are the syllable division rules and the syllable types. They're also in smaller format. Here's one of the first syllable division pages where they only have one type of syllable here, so they don't label it, but the first syllable rule is divide between 2 consonants that are between 2 vowels, and they divide them and then they read them, and they put these little swoopy lines underneath them here to divide the words in 2. Now here's one a little further along where there's 3 kinds of syllables but only 1 kind of syllable division still. Here's one a little further where they have 5 different kinds of syllables and 2 syllable division rules. Here's one that has 4 different kinds of dividing rules and all 6 syllable types. And here's one that has 5 types of syllable division rules and all 6 syllable types. So you're going to build on this. You will learn this as you go. If you're Orton-Gillingham trained, you're going to know this is pretty standard, but otherwise you will learn it as you go along. And as you see, we divide most words with these little swoopy lines. And what we have here is a bunch of these little mustache dealy things, which we cut out and we put those under words in the text in order to divide words in the text without having to draw lines in there. So this is a really good procedure because it breaks words into smaller chunks and it makes those chunks easier to read. So the next thing I want to talk about is word reading. Now, what we did with word reading is we put the words on pages like this. Now, most Orton-Gillingham programs use a lot of flashcards, and I still use some flashcards, but I got real tired of having 7,000 flashcards in my room. So I wanted to see if I could find a different way to present the words that would help students not visually confuse words, which is why we do them on flashcards. So I put the words surrounded by a white space and surrounded by a black box with a number in it. And sure enough, this works very well. They do not transpose letters and sounds up through these lines. So this worked very well. So this is the format that we developed in this program for word reading. Now, so as you can see, this is one of the first lessons. This is lesson 1. The other advantage of this is you can kind of compare words together. I mean, mad and mat, there's only 1 letter difference there. Okay, mat and at, there's an added letter here. So you can kind of do some comparisons in there, which is another thing that's very useful. And also with the pages with 2-syllable words, especially after a new kind of syllable division, you can use these little mustache-looking things. The students use these to help them divide the words that makes it easier for them to read those words. So that's how we use those things. And when we teach students how to sound out words, we use the finger tapping technique, which is from Barbara Wilson of the Wilson Reading System. It's a very strong phonemic awareness training technique, as well as being multisensory, involving all these senses. So what the student does is they tap their fingers to their thumb as they say the various sounds that are in the word. And they go from left to right. I'm going to go from the camera angle left to right, but I teach it left to right at first. After they know it, if it's working well, I don't care if they're going up or down or backwards, but if it's working, it doesn't matter. So anyway, a word like man would be man, man. So they say it faster and faster until they get that word. And you'll have to teach this, you'll have to model it, but it's a really powerful technique. A word like flat would be flat, flat, flat. A word like sleep would be sleep, 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 okay? Words with more sounds in, like blast, would be blast, blast, blast. So you see how that works. It helps them blend those sounds together. And it's a real powerful technique. And it's also useful for older students because they can do this if they happen to be in the library or somewhere else. They can do this with their hand in their pocket or their hand behind their back. But it is a very, very powerful way to help students blend those sounds together. And we use this with all ages, from little children who can move their fingers like this to older students too. This is such a powerful technique. We use it with everybody.
Eel, 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 steel.
Okay.
Stray.
Very good. Another thing about reading words is if a student is trying to read a phonetic word from the word list, one that can be sounded out, and he's having trouble, and I tell him what the word is, well, we've just wasted our time. He hasn't learned anything. We just wasted a few minutes. So I never tell a student what the word is, but I will help them sound it out. Like if the word's man, I might go man, or I may go man, and I'll give him hints so he at least gets a part of that work. He at least does a part of the sounding out. And then maybe later on he does a little more of the sounding out, and a little more. So every time he sounds out that word or a word like that, he learns something additional. So I may also say, well, what do you hear at the beginning of that word, or what do you hear at the end of the word, or what sound does OW spell? To give him those kind of hints, it's going to help. Now, part of this is that I may have to help Johnny for a minute and a half sound out a word, which is one of the reasons we work in small groups, because if there's 5 kids waiting, that's one thing. If there's 30 kids waiting, that's a whole nother problem. But Johnny needs that 1.5 minutes for me to help him work with that. And then the same thing is true when we read sentences. I may have to help a student read a sentence for 2 or 3 minutes. And that's real valuable time for that student. But again, if you've got a lot of kids waiting, it's going to be hard to do that. Also, and then we'll go on to sentence reading here. And sentences in the book are on pages like this. And we've also done this again to try to avoid visual confusion that sometimes beginning or struggling readers have. So we put these dark lines in between the sentences. And this works really well to isolate them. Students do not transpose letters and sounds through these lines here. So, of course, when we read sentences, we're going to use the finger tapping technique. We're going to use the swoopy tools for the 2-syllable words. And also a lot of times, and of course we're going to be joking around with some of the text, but also a lot of times I will ask a student to read a sentence a second time. First time they sound it out, then I ask them to read it faster, because I want to work on that fluency. I don't do it all the time, but I do it a lot, so that they learn. They sound out a sentence, then they read it faster afterwards. It's one of those things that helps with fluency. And then I also want to ask questions about vocabulary and comprehension and make sure they understand the sentences. Now these sentences, which are in these bigger boxes here, which are in almost every lesson, is a lot of times where the silliness is and the play acting stuff comes from. Give me some dirt, I'll give somebody some dirt that day. I am a girl. It's pretty funny if you're a boy reading that. And there's various other things on here. What's up? What up? Chirp for me. Twirl for me. So it's very action-oriented things you can do. And this is one of the earlier lessons. So let me talk for a few minutes about fluency. There's a lot of fluency ideas in the text, and a lot of things that you can try with fluency drills. There's a lot we're learning about fluency right now, and so a lot of research is being done in that realm, so there will be more information about that coming. But let me show you a real simple fluency drill that you can do with a student. So here is from Chapter 8. Here are some sentences from Chapter 8. And what I've done down here is I've run this off, which you have permission to do for fluency drills, and I put the number of words here. So you bring a student up, you have them read for 1 minute, or if it's a young student, you might want to read for 2 minutes. And then you tell them, you got this many words right, and you missed this word, and you read fat for fed, and tell him the mistakes that he's made. And you send him back to his desk and ask him to read it twice by himself. Then you have him come back again, and you have him read for another minute. Then you talk again about how many words he read and where the mistakes were and where he needs to look more carefully. Send him back to his desk one more time, have him read twice by himself again, and come up for the third time and read for 1 more minute. And then you look at how far he's gotten then at that point. And you see growth. You can usually see a lot of growth from the first reading to the second reading to the third reading. And if you want to, you can chart this and make this a regular part of your program. But you can also do this with other books. It's just that you know from this, after you've been there, you know that your student can read 90 and 95% of those words, and that's what you need to do fluency drills in the first place. But if your student, say, reads 30 words a minute on the first reading and 29 on the second reading and 31 on the third reading, good chance that's a student that needs fluency drills. And we're still trying to find out which kids really need fluency drills and which don't. Because I'm starting to practice these fluency drills with younger students to see, because a lot of students that I've taught reading and taught automatic word recognition have not needed fluency drills, but some students absolutely need fluency drills. Okay, now we're going to talk about block spelling and sound spelling, And these are both very powerful phonemic awareness training techniques as well as powerful phonics techniques. They're multisensory and they really help students understand that underlying structure of words or the underlying sound structure of words. They're especially important for beginning readers of any age. Now what I use for block spelling is these little plastic blocks, and if you're working with older students you might want to use something else, pennies and nickels or whatever, but this is any kind of manipulative that you keep using the same thing for the same. So this I use for a consonant sound block, my blues, and for yellows I use that for the vowel sound block. So in lesson 1, the students have read the word mad, and they've read the word mad in some sentences, and then I give them these blocks and I say, spell the word mad for me. And the student puts the blocks in order like this, hopefully. And what I say is, give me the sounds of the word from left to right. I'm going to go from the camera angle left to right. Student will go d. Now give me the letters from left to right. M-A-D. Now if that student can't remember what this sound is, they can stretch it out and go apple. That's what it is, A. Remember that keyword. If they go money, that's M. Okay, and also when you're doing this with them, you can help them stretch this out too. So you can go ad, so that they can more clearly hear those sounds. At first, if the student's struggling, that's one thing you're going to want to do. Now these blocks stand for sounds rather than necessarily for single letters. So the word teach would be spelled the same way. T-each. T-E-A-C-H. Now when we do magic E words, we have this little cutout that we place here because the magic E doesn't make a sound, so we don't give it a block. So this would be the word take. T-A-K-E. The word flat would look like this. F-O-at. F-L-A-T.
S-U-I-P.
Good.
S-L-I-P spells slip.
Very good. Wishbone.
Wishbone.
And what goes on the end?
Magic.
Okay, now would you show us with this hand, please? Go ahead.
W-I-S-H-B-O.
Spell it.
W-I
Wishbone.
S-H-B-O-N magic E.
Now as we go on in the lessons, we do block spelling and sound spelling with longer and longer words. So I'm going to show you one of the longer words that we get to a little bit later on in the program. This is the word fantastic. Fantastic. F-A-N-T-A-S-T-I-C. So look what we're doing here. Well, we're training the structure of words, obviously, in a very concrete way. You can't get more concrete than this. So we're training the structure of language, the sound structure of language. We're doing left-right tracking, which is beneficial for a lot of students. We're doing phoneme segmentation, which is the best predictor of early reading success according to research and can be taught, and we're teaching it here. We're doing phoneme identification, which is spelling, and we're doing short-term sequential linguistic memory, which is necessary for reading and spelling. And what short-term linguistic memory is, it's the ability to hold a bunch of linguistic elements in your head in a specific order, which is what you need to take a bunch of sounds and stick them together to read, or take sounds apart in order to spell. And a lot of our students have trouble with that particular skill. So now I'm going to look at sound spelling, and sound spelling is also a very powerful phonemic awareness. It's multisensory. It teaches the structure of words. I, at this point, use block spelling and sound spelling about the same, about 50-50. So a lot of times I'll do maybe block spelling for this lesson and sound spelling for the next, and alternate, or sometimes if it's a long lesson, I'll go back and forth within that lesson. So what we do here is the student will write a word and say the sounds that the letter spells as he writes the word. So the word cat would be k, a, t. The word sleep would be s, o, e, p. Okay? The word glad would be g, o, a, d. The word word sunset would be s, s, et. The word mad would be and. Now there's some kind of fun we can do with this, which is also very educational. Here's the word mad, and I'll ask a student, okay, change it to the word had. And there we have had. There's had, change it to hat. And there's hat. There's hat, change it to hot. And there's hot. There's hot, change it to hit. And there's hit. So that's also a very beneficial thing to do also. And I do it on this whiteboard, which I pass around to the various students, and they like writing on this thing. Creep.
Heap.
Good. And spell sheet. Good. Block spelling and sound spelling impact reading at least as much as the impact spelling. When my students are having trouble reading a set of words, I do more block spelling and more sound spelling, and they read them better. Also, my students seem to enjoy doing both of these activities. So both of these techniques are very powerful techniques for teaching that structure of language and the structure of words, which students need to be able to read and spell. Now, I want to talk to you for a couple minutes about what's been referred to as the spelling voice. Now, very good spellers can see words in their head. A lot of our students cannot do that. So we use the spelling voice to try to compensate for that. Myself, the only reason I can spell the word Wednesday is because in my head I think Wednesday. The reason I can spell basket is because somewhere in my head I hear basket. So what we do with students, and we do these mostly with schwas, sometimes with silent letters, but there are 4 schwa lessons in here, and schwas are those letters that don't say either long or short sounds, but to say a different kind of sound. We use the spelling voice. So what I'll say to a student is, I want you to spell the word magnet, but it's spelled magnet. Okay? And then I can give it to him for block spelling or sound spelling or written spelling or oral spelling. But if he can remember magnet along with magnet, he can spell that word. So we're doing that more and more. It is a very beneficial technique, and it is helping our students spell those irregular words. A few things I don't have time to review on this tape. We have an individualized spelling program. In this program, we have a long vowel spelling frequency program, and we have about 10 really good spelling rules that we teach. So I want to talk for a few minutes about charades and other games. And these are optional, but there are some games in here which it suggests that are really important. Now, when I do charades with my students, I just bring a student up, point to a word in a lesson we've just done, student acts it out, and the rest of the kids guess. Now, you may not be in a situation where you can do that, but one thing you can do if you have to keep your students a little quieter is have students pick a sentence in a lesson and draw a picture about it and have the other kids guess. So that's one way you can do that. And there are a lot of other suggestions for games and activities in here. There are a couple good fluency flashcard activities for you to make. And there's also the one that I like and the kids like also is syllable concentration. In syllable concentration, you take a 2-syllable word, you write 1 syllable on one card and 1 syllable on the other card, and you do a bunch of those and you turn them over and you play concentration. Students like it, and at the same time it's very educational. And you could also do that in a tutoring situation because you and the student could be playing each other, and that works very well also. Now let me talk about homework. About every 6 lessons there is a drawing homework page, and the students can read all these words by this lesson. So they just read what it says on the line. The roach ate the green slime, and they draw a picture of it. Okay. Now this is totally optional for older students, but younger students love this stuff, and they're always going to want to draw it. So it's definitely there for younger students. Now again, you can do this in class or you can send it home. Now the next part of homework, which is really the important part of homework, are the yes and no questions. We talked about this a little bit before. What they're doing in here is they're taking the words they learned in that lesson and they're answering these yes and no questions. Now, if you decide to, as a tutor, leave this for homework, as a classroom teacher, send it home for homework, it needs to be done without parents' help. And if you do it in the classroom, you need to do it without you helping them, because this is one of the ways you're going to tell whether or not you've mastered that lesson. This is one of the primary ways you're going to tell that. Also, students like these. I get reports from parents that the kids were sitting in the corner giggling and doing these pages. I had a teacher once that told me her kids got mad every time they didn't get their yes and no homework that day. But they need to do them independently so that you can tell if they actually are doing okay with that lesson. Here's one a little bit further along the line. Also, in the elementary mid-school programs, you have sheets for each lesson with all the words you've just taught. And on the bottom it says, please sign your name after your child has read these words to you. So you can send this home and have the student read the words that they just learned to mom or dad. And you could leave it also if you're a tutor, same thing. And usually they can read these words pretty well by the end of the lesson, so they're kind of proud to read this anyway, but they can read it to mom or dad or grandpa or older sibling. I one year worked in a school where almost nobody returned homework, and I got 75% homework returned with this because it's simple, it's the same thing, you don't have to figure anything out. All you do is have the kid read the words to you, the student read the words to you, and then sign your name. So that can be very useful for elementary and mid-school kids. I recently put in about 45 of these Mad Lib type of sheets, and what they can, this is basically after lesson 11. After lesson 11 they can read all these words, and you talk about nouns, what a noun is, and they just fill in a noun in each one, and they can do silly stuff. I tell them if they make me laugh they get extra credit. So we have a bunch of the noun sheets from different lessons, a bunch of sheets where they fill in verbs, another bunch of sheets where they fill in adjectives, and then a few sheets that deal with some of these hard words like there, and there. That's another one of the difficult one for some students. So let me talk for a second about how you know how to move on to the next lesson. What I say is that each set of words should be learned to 90% mastery by your students by the end of the lesson before moving on to the next lesson. This means that the students should be able to read at least 9 out of 10 words with little or no help from you. They should also be able to read the read words for the lesson, give the letter names and sounds covered, and do the spell it cards and block spelling or sound spelling for the words in that lesson. They should also be able to read and understand the sentences in that lesson. Now, Anna Gillingham used to say, go as fast as you can and as slowly as you must. So basically, you want to make fast progress, but you also want to attain mastery or close to mastery at each lesson. And one thing that I do is a lot of times I'll just race ahead until I see the kids kind of floundering, and then I'll slow down and make sure I'm getting mastery. But if you pay attention to all the different pieces that need to be mastered in a lesson, then you will know when to go on to the next lesson.
I no longer send the yes-no worksheets to be done at home. Instead, what I do now is have the students do the yes-no worksheets at the end of the lesson in the classroom, but independently. Then I mark them so I have an assessment for each lesson before we review them in class. After that, I send them home with the word sheets to be read aloud for homework. I also take notes during a lesson so I can remember. This group needs more work in this lesson. Timmy doesn't quite understand this concept in this lesson, and so forth, so I know where to focus in on future reading lessons.
Okay, we're going to talk for a few minutes about the Dynamic Roots program. This program teaches higher level reading and vocabulary skills through the study of prefixes, suffixes, root words, and word origins and word histories. You need a strong 4th grade reading level or above to use this program, and I'll often use it after I get done with the Morgan Dynamic Phonics programs. I'll go right into the Dynamic Roots programs. This is that morphology that we saw in the triangle, or morphological awareness. It's crucial for some students, and it's beneficial for many more. This program contains the accurate word origin definitions of over 2,000 words arranged into 62 Latin roots and 6 chapters of words from Greek origin. The words are defined by their morphemes, or their meaningful word parts, their origins, and their present-day definitions. Now, we know from research that good readers, when they see a word that they don't know, they look for morphemes first. ing, ed, re, pre. They look for those and for the meaning of the word first. We know that a lot of our students that have trouble learning to read don't look for morphemes at all. So it's something that they need to be taught. Word histories make words and their meanings more memorable. The word disaster means without stars. From an astrological point of view, if the stars are not in your favor, you might have a bad day. Auspicious means to look at birds, because there used to be these guys called augurs that would watch birds fly and foretell the future, and the kings and priests actually listened to these people. If you were in ancient Greece and you were not a public official, you were called an idiot. It didn't mean dumb back then, it just meant you weren't a public official. Now tell me what student is not going to remember that story. We're in the process of adding about 500, 600, 700 more words to this program that reflect the history of words, that reflect certain kind of notions and ideas that people have. We're going to have a section on gender bias, on class bias, on number bias, on right-handed bias, words from mythology, and words from religion. So in a way, when you study the history of words, you're studying history, because you're studying what these people were thinking about when they invented or coined these words 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. The word holiday used to be holy day, because the only days off that the working man got were religious holidays. So this is a great vocabulary building program. It's used in elementary, mid-school, high school, even college, and of course with adults, used in special ed, Title I, ESL, and in general ed classes also. It's good preparation for SATs, tests, for ACTs, for college entrance exams. Now, good readers also can benefit from this kind of work. What we know from research is that our students 30 years ago had much better vocabularies than they do now. And part of that is that even some good readers go home every night and watch TV and play video games, and their vocabulary does not expand because they're not reading. And that's why I have more and more of this program in general education classrooms. Now this is one of the lessons here, and this is from the teacher's manual, so you have all the definitions in here. And this is the root word to port, which means to carry. Now with younger students, I'll just tell them this means to carry, and I'm going to be working off this myself. And if you're a tutor, you can work on a piece of paper on the table. If you're a teacher, you can work on the blackboard or the overhead as you go through these words and piece them together, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So first thing I'll ask is the students, do you know any words with port in them? And the wise guy in the back will always shout out, porta potty. And then we'll start going through these words and looking at the definitions of the different parts. So if we're looking for X, they have prefix charts with prefix meanings on them, and also for suffixes they have the same thing. So for the word export, we'll look up the word X and we'll find out it means out. So you got carry out, carry, Chinese food, no, it's something carried out of a country. Then they look under M means into, something carried into a country. And then we have opportunity here, which has an interesting story. Opportunity means coming into port, which used to mean the wind was coming into port, which meant ships could come into port. Before we had planes, trains, and automobiles, that is what brought new people, new goods, and new opportunity to that village. So what happens here as they're learning the root words, they're looking up the prefixes and suffixes more than once. A lot of times they're looking up prefixes and suffixes and they're learning those root words, is what happens is their vocabulary can expand by thousands and thousands of words, because you're giving them these different word parts that have meanings, so they're going to find in other words all over the place as they learn more, as they read more and more sophisticated material. For instance, if your student knows that pre means before, then preheat, pre-game, prenatal, pre-shrink, pre-wash, predict, and preview all make sense to them. If your students know that tele is a Greek combining form, which means from afar, from far away, telephone means sound from far away, television means seeing from far away, telegraph means writing from far away, telescope allows you to see something that's far away, and telepathy means feeling from far away. So it's as you learn these parts, it expands your vocabulary even beyond this to many, many thousands of other words. Now, I was driving in my car the other day, and I heard somebody refer to one of our prominent politicians as a congenital liar. Now, I couldn't remember what congenital meant, but I remembered that gen comes from that root word where gene and genetics and genus and generate and germ come from, which has to do with birth or origin. And I know that con means together or with, so we're talking about, with birth. So basically what they were saying was this person was a born liar. And I could figure that out because I knew those word pieces. Also, this program is not cumulative, so you can go to any lesson in here and do that. If you're doing a lesson on a unit on the legislature, you can just go to the leg-lect Latin root and do that. And that's the one that has lecture and legal and illegal and legible and ineligible, all in that, and just do that one particular root word, one particular lesson. So after you go through these, and they're looking up the prefixes and suffixes as they go, and they're learning those. If you're one of the Greek lessons, they'll be looking in the Greek combining forms list, which is a different list than the other two. Then they'll go into their reading books, which they have the words and the words in context and sentences. And I also sell this as a reproducible, especially for larger classes, so that they can run these off. But this gives them another context to understand these words. And then, of course, we have the yes and no questions, which is still another context for them to read and understand those words in. And then the thing that kind of ties this whole thing, brings the whole lesson together, is this matching page with the words and the definitions where they have to match the two. So the interesting thing about this is there's a couple of different ways to do this, to access this information. If you know the meaning of export, and you can go over here and find the definition of export, then that's fine. If you don't know the definition of export, but you look up X, and it means out, then you can look over here for the word out and perhaps find the definition that way. But my students will have their prefix-suffix list, they'll be looking up definitions, and they'll be trying to match these things. And it's a little bit hard for them, but it really kind of pulls the whole lesson together. If I'm working with a small group, I'll make sure everybody gets everything right before I go over them. With a bigger group, I'll do some of that, but I probably won't be able to do it all, but we'll make sure that at least they get them right when you go over them and correct them in the long run. We probably will be adding another kind of optional worksheet to this program within the next 6 months or so. I also suggest that in this program, it might be a good idea for you to use this for your spelling program too, if you're a teacher in a classroom, to use the words that you just read and understood and dissected and figured out and talked about for your spelling program. You can take 10 or 15 words from a particular lesson and make that your spelling program for that week. So this is a good higher level vocabulary and reading program, which is necessary for some students, beneficial to many others, and a productive and fun way to learn vocabulary. So now I'm going to go through the letters and the sounds for you, and you want to make a note where this is in your videotape so you can come back and refer to this, because I'm going to say the sounds to you clearly so that you can make sure you're saying the sounds clearly and teaching the sounds clearly to your students. This is C, cat, k. A, apple, a. O, octopus, ah. T, table, t. H, hat, h. L, lips, o. M, money, m. G, goat, g. D, dog, d. Now see how small that is? It's not duh, it's d. So you have to say it kind of softly. J, juggle, j. I, itchy, I. K, kite, k. P, pizza, p. CH, chin, ch. U, up, B, bat, b. R, rat, it's kind of a growling sound. And your tongue is kind of pointing toward the roof of your mouth. F, fan, f. N, nut, n. E, eddy, eh. S, sad, s. SH, ship, sh. TH, them, v. You stick your tongue out. This is the one that vibrates, that uses your voice. Them. W, web, w. WH, whip, w. V, Valentine, v. Y, yo, y. TH, thumb, th. So this is a TH that's not voiced. Still stick your tongue out, but there's no voice sound. Th, th. X, box, x. Z, zipper, z. QU, queen, qua. And so next we're going to look at the blends and the sounds of the blends, and we don't have keywords for these blends because they're not really new sounds, they're just combinations of sounds, but it is beneficial to learn them also as blends as well as single letters put together. So we have bowl, coal, full, goal, pole, soul, st, sp, burr, dur, gur, per, cur, fur, tur, sk, sn, sk, twa, swa, sm, squa, st, nt, pt, nd, mp, sp, olt, olk, ulp, sk, nch, ft, olm, kst, kt, ulf, skr, shur, stir, spol, spur, and ch. And now we're going to move to the big phoneme cards, and there also are syllable division cards in here and syllable types. And we've put the short vowels in here for extra emphasis. So at first this would be O, octopus, ah, just like in the other cards. But later on, after lesson 52, when we've had open syllables, this also stands for the sound O in an open syllable. So at that point, the student would say ah in a closed syllable, O in an open syllable. A in a closed syllable, A in an open syllable. I in a closed syllable, I in an open syllable. E in a closed syllable, E in an open syllable. A in a closed syllable, U or U in an open syllable. Then we have ing, ong, ung, ang, ink, onk, unk, ink. A consonant E, game A. O consonant E, joke O. I consonant E, time I. E consonant E, Pete E. U consonant E, cute flute, oo and U. These are closed syllables. ER, her, You kind of pucker your lips a little bit. For that sound. EA, eat, E. EA, bread, E. So we remember eat bread to remember those two sounds. OA, boat, O. AI, brain, A. IR, bird, It's the same sound as ER. EE, feed, E. AY, play, A. OE, toe, O. UR, church, So we have IR, ER, and UR that all say and I teach my kids the sentence, her bird is in the church, to remember those three sounds, and sometimes I'll draw a picture of that on the blackboard. OW, owl, plow. OWO, snow. We remember snow plow to remember those two sounds. OU, owl, mouse. OU, oo, soup. We remember mouse soup to remember those two sounds. IGH, fight, I. These are consonant LE syllables. Full, goal, zol, coal. Toll, dole, bowl, pole. AR, car, R. OR, horn, or. OO, school, oo. OO, book, We remember school book to remember those two sounds. Y, happy, E. Y, fly, I. We remember happy fly to remember those two sounds, the vowel sounds of Y. AU, August, awe. AW, awesome, awe. ED has three sounds, id, t, and d. All, ball, alt, salt, wall, walrus, awk, talk, wah, want. Special sounds for those. O-I, boy, oi. O-I, coin, oi. C followed by E-I or Y spells S. G followed by E-I or Y usually spells J. Eild, old, eind, ost. Faster, ist, fastest. These are 4 more ways to spell oo. These are 3 more ways to spell e. These are 2 more ways to spell I. These are 2 more ways to spell A. War, warm, were, work, qua, squash, quar, quarter. These are 6 ways to spell air in the English language. Silent letter lesson. Chur as in capture. Un as in unhappy. Re as in repaint. Ibble, able as in visible. Able as in likable. In as in broken. Full, useful. Nis, sadness. Lis, helpless. Idge, garbage. Mint, pavement. Lee, friendly. Doctor. Dollar. Silent letters. Is, famous. Addition, shun. Question, chun. 2 sounds of T-I-O-N. Mansion, shun. Vision, jun. Shun and jun. Sh, social. Sh, Martian. Zh, Asia. Uri, slavery. Airy, ordinary. Uri, memory. Int, balance. Int, sentence. So those are the sounds in the program. In conclusion, these reading programs combine the effectiveness of multisensory Orton-Gillingham program with powerful phonemic awareness training techniques with interesting and humorous reading text to make outstanding reading programs for students struggling with reading or adults who have not learned to read.
These programs are in line with the latest research in reading instruction and have proven effectiveness with struggling readers.
With these programs, if you know how to read, you can teach someone else how to read, whether they are 7 years old or 70. Read the directions, be patient and positive, and have fun as your student or students grows in confidence and self-esteem as they learn the nuts and bolts of reading and spelling through the Morgan Dynamic Phonics programs.